All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome here, and I want to welcome Hayes. Uh, we met in a very particular time, and he's with our talks and the things that they are for. He's specializing in high sensitivity personality. He's a very good psychologist in there. He's got some experience. Himself is also he's a high sensitivity person. He can speak to you with a very good informative knowledge. He's a great guy. I'm thankful to the universe that set us up. We actually met in Spain. That's how we connected in Spain. So, hi, Karen. Thank you to see you here. So, without further ado, I want to introduce you to Gijs, and he's going to be saying a few words about him and introduce himself in there. I have some few questions that I kind of like to prepare for him. But if you guys have some any questions please put it in the chat on the YouTube, and we're going to be taking it from there. So, welcome again here, Hayes, and would you please kind of like introduce yourself, say a few words for you?
Hi Dio, it's good to see you again, even though online. Welcome to everybody here. I am Gijs Van Breugel, which translates that directly that I'm from the Netherlands. I'm a Dutchman. I'm 53 years old and I live in France, in Normandy, near the capital of Normandy, Rouen. Would be about, I'd say I'm about 1 hour, 50 minutes from Paris to give you geographical orientation. Um, I am officially a positive psychology therapist and coach, so psychotherapist. And one of my main stream work method is positive psychology. I'll leave it to Dio to interrogate me on that a little bit later if he wants and if he wishes. Um, I have an online practice, which means that I work from home or wherever I am. Like last September in Spain, where I have Wi-Fi, I will connect with my clients who are literally all over the world, from New Zealand, Auckland to America, Minnesota to France to England, because I speak four languages, so I take full advantage of that to be able to work with clients all over the world, which I love because the cultural differences are a challenge in psychology and psychotherapy working with clients. I'm 53 years old, happily married, and a French bulldog who terrorizes the house. What else would you like to know, Dio?
First of all, most of the people are not that much familiar with psychology, particularly on the field that you're working with the high sensitivity personality in there. Could you kind of like in a brief words explain to the people what that is and kind of like so the people can know about it? Because in my field, as in the twin flame, everyone is highly sensitive. They're highly sensitive to emotions. They're highly sensitive to the energies itself, particularly within the emotional state in there, which is that emotional state turns to energy in the field. And it is about this kind of like introducing this with you are actually familiar with that sensitivities, and later on we're gonna be go from there how that affects the people.
Okay, well, let me take it from there actually, because your high sensitivity is not my high sensitivity, if I can explain it like that.
Yes.
Yes, we have personality traits and we have personality models all over the place. Myers-Briggs, the big five, there are about 16 who are at least acknowledged in the field of psychology, which handle with high sensitivity. However, when I talk about HSP, high sensitive person, I'm going to a very much deeper layer of our being, our in person operating system. Being a high sensitive person is not a personality trait among the others or a collection of personality traits. It is actually for 20% of the world population their operating system. And I usually explain it to clients who need more insight. We all know this one, our iPhone or our Galaxy or our Xiaomi or whatever, Mark. Those things, those beasties, they have an operating system, iOS, internal operating system. Without that, the system does not function. And on and in that operating system, we install apps, YouTube, email, Facebook, Messenger, whatever you use. Apps and operating system need to be aligned. I cannot install an Android app on an Apple iPhone. They will not work together because the operating system, and in this case, the highly sensitive person operating system, is our deep layer of functioning. It comes actually, it is purely biological because in nature we need people slash animals who go out, who forage and who get the food. And we need the people slash the animals because high sensitivity person is also high sensitive animal because what we see in people goes the same for the animal kingdom, especially the mammals. Part of that animal kingdom is also high sensitive because they are the guards, the guardians. They look out for danger. So they have big antennas where their senses are heightened, where they can see the smallest change in the environment. They can hear the smallest sounds that might indicate danger. They can sense a change in vibration around them, which could mean that something dangerous is happening. So the high sensitivity person operating system is actually something that goes much deeper and statistically proven now 20% of the world population has that operating system. Doesn't
Woohoo.
mean that they all have problems with that operating system because a big part of that 20% functions as we human try to function as. However, if the apps that have been installed on our operating system in our lives are not the right ones, we get problems. And that's partly where I come in.
I like the way you put it with the apps, particularly since I'm a very technology person in there. I love this for and the way that you did. Do you think that we as the humans forgot this animal part with the too much antennas within us? And right now, with the current evolutionary state of the humanity that goes on, do you think that we are going back and we are enabling this antennas within ourselves, these senses, as you said, those vibes in there? And with this kind of like an operation system, as you said, that we are operating back from this sensitivity, these vibrations, and so forth. Are we are awakening? Are we are advancing, or we are remembering? How advanced are we in a base of your experience? What is it the most common the problem where the people they have with these issues in there? And with that being said, I want to say thank you for the CC Heart of Source. It's here, CF, and Heart of Source is gonna have a question. I'm gonna read it after you answer this. So we're gonna go from there.
Okay, well, obviously, being a psychotherapist, I'm analyzing your question, which was actually three questions. So if you'll allow me, take one,
Yes,
two, and
yes.
three. Um, being a highly sensitive person does not automatically mean we are extrovert or introvert, or we are empathetic or we are not empathetic. Those are the apps that are installed on our system. Um, it basically indicates how we deal with dot 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 trauma, children, problems in life, work, um, nature nurture. It is the way that a highly sensitive person reacts to and manages, for example, trauma. Someone who is HSP and has, for example, lived through child abuse will live that abuse. And that's where I take a practical example out of my practice with, sadly, one of my clients. He, because it was a he in this case, lives that child abuse much more in depth and um, menacing his life than someone who is not HSP. They will have another way of treating it. Someone who is not HSP would actually go a little bit more directly to one of the coping systems that Dr. Freud has written out in his books, which would be, for example, distraction, pulling yourself away from what happens and actually compartmentalizing it in our heads, forgetting it between brackets. An HSP can't forget. They will
Some
still
sort
live
of
through it.
like a running away, that kind of like a running personality,
Yeah.
like running away from.
Distanciation. No,
Yes.
not running away because that would be an active decision, but I would say distanciation. So putting it in our long-term memory and closing the doors.
Hmm.
Something that HSPs, highly sensitive persons, can't do. Now, going to your second question, which is about the world that we live in today. The world that we live in today, since a little bit before COVID, has actually become a world where we are actively surviving. You will find that a lot of persons at this moment are still in survival mode, looking at the wars, looking at what recently happened in Syria, looking at, and I'm not getting into politics, but the choices that the American people made. For some, that's quite agreeable. For others, that's horrific. It
Hmm.
puts us in a survival mode, which means that we have to delve up our ancient coping mechanisms back to back to nature. How are we going to defend ourselves? Who, who and what, and in what way how are we going to survive what is happening at this point?
Hmm.
Does that make sense? That answer?
Oh, perfectly makes sense, because in my
I'm asking
field.
that question because I'm getting my tea ready, actually, at this point.
Well, enjoy your tea right now. Because in my field here, for it, and as a twin flames, what happens is during the this mirroring firing of the mirroring neurons, which is that is a how we learn. In there, this highly sensitivity begins to be open up during the energies exchange or consciousness exchange in there, which is I did the study with a lot of people who did the study in the mirroring neurons in there. People became highly sensitive, particularly to a certain person in there because you exchange consciousness in there. It's already been developed in this. But the coping mechanism that people will use and that survival mode begins to tell them, as you said, that apps doesn't operate properly, which is coming from this programming and from this survival mode. And the people don't understand how to cope and that they are becoming this highly sensitivity person right now because they begin to um, think deep, feel deep, sensing the vibrations, working with the energies, feeling the energies, what they are, they feeling the collective energies in there. And that leads to, people go back into, they have to fix their um, psychology to work with the philosophy. And ultimately that leads to, in a way, to the way of the spirituality in there. But my thing about you is, uh, how did that change when a person said to you, "I wasn't like this, but now I'm a highly sensitive." I just
Okay.
get that.
There's something that I need to make very clear here.
Yeah, yeah,
We are talking about two different dimensions.
yeah, yeah.
If you'll allow me the analysis, you are
Mm-hmm,
talking about a personality trait, an app,
mm-hmm,
sensitivity,
mm-hmm.
which can vary, linked to other personality traits like introversion, extroversion, empathy, and there's a whole range that we can talk about for days and
Yes.
weeks and months to go.
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking about an operating system which has been coined and labeled 25 years ago by Dr. Elaine Aron. And you have it or you don't have it. Because the origin from our operating system is actually defined in our DNA. Certain chromosomes indicate that you are either in the operating system that 20% of the world population has, which is called high sensitive person, or you're not. It doesn't matter if you're man or woman. There's
Mm-hmm.
no there's equal chance that you can have it, but it comes with birth. It can even be hereditary. So there's operating system, and that's the level where I work, and it has influence on the whole picture, on the whole painting.
Mm-hmm.
And there's in the picture, there's a part of the picture which is the personality trait high sensitivity, and that's where your expertise lies,
Mm-hmm.
and which indeed is much more variable, which can also come later because it can be developed.
Oh, exactly. Because this, what I was paying attention to over the years in there was about that the people when it comes in for they begin to ask questions, and I see my limitations, and this is why I know some of the people are said like, you need to straighten up your psyche, you need to talk to a professional, you need to talk to a psychologist. This is why I decided, to seek. That's how we met, in there, because I was seeking for a person, particularly who is specializing on this highly sensitivity personality. There is some people here who have a questions towards you. Um, Never mind the physical sense having the high sensitivity. Navigations, the sensitivity of the clear sense is a charge. Living with a high bandwidth multidimensionality leaves the room for psychological rest. That
I
is it,
can't
the
see the
common.
question on this. I can't see the question from
Uh,
this side, so I haven't properly
More like
understood the remark.
yeah, it sounds more like a comment in there but there is another question. Uh, oh, she says like I feel like I am a stem cell. Hearts of Source. If you got like a particular questions, that will be good if you're posting here at the YouTube on the chat. Sisi, I have a question for you. Do you recognize your clients saying this is a curse instead of a gift? And do you agree most of them will not adjust in their life as the world like to? Perhaps like a functions better and accept.
Hmm. No, I totally don't agree with that statement, and but I say that with my blessing and my best and with my best intentions. Because, for example, when you go to the Eastern countries, Asia, Japan, China, Korea, etc., you will find that the HSP operating system is actually widely accepted. It is also in relation to, for example, where we in Western society live in a quite in an individual society where you stand out when you are maybe um, for a man, masculine, individual, conquering, etc. Where you go, if you go to the Asian countries, group feeling, empathy, group binding, some of the traits that come with HSP are actually widely accepted. So if you go, it's not a yes or a no, or it's not a it doesn't rule out one or the other. It also connects to the culture where you live in. Statistically, and psychologists and psychotherapists are wild with statistics. Statistically, it's been proven over the last 25 years since the notion of HSP has been coined by Dr. Aaron, that in Eastern countries, Asian countries, this kind of operating system is much more appreciated and accepted than, for example, in our Western Occident orientated countries where we have another outlook on how life and society should function.
Hmm. So you're saying that the culture within a person, it is the one that actually kind of like affects the basic culture. Like for instance, the cultures there, and as you say, it's Asia, and particularly, let's say, like Japan, or that kind of like a region in there. But as we getting into this new culture awakenings in there, how would you say that uh, the person has it, but he's never, because of a cultural difference, as you say, in the West, in there, let's say that the person had that operation system within him, this high sensitivity. He knew that exists. He knew that it is, but because of the culture situations, kind of like a put a cap on it. And is it like, okay, I have it, but I put a cap on it. But all of a sudden something happens in their life and this cap is off. So the genie is out. The highly sensitivity is out. How did the people they feel when they awaken for this, basically, as we call it?
It's I would expand
Yes, yes,
a little
please.
bit on that
Yes, of
because
course.
it what's added, and that's actually basic psychology, nature nurture. Nature, you have it, it's in your system, it's in your DNA, but then nurture comes in, which will allow to develop or actually not develop. If you're a high sensitive person, and you are still a baby, and your parents see how you operate and how you function and adapt to that way of functioning, you will grow up a very happy and understood child, go through puberty in a way that it works, but then comes in school. Does school understand your high sensitivity operating system? Some school systems, like for example, the Montessori schools in Holland, actually cater for that kind of operating system, and already since the 1950s. Other schools, which are more Western orientated, black and white, would actually put a cap on it, as you say it. And that would mean that the person could become, and I say could become, dysfunctional. And that the moment that, as you say, something happens like a trauma, he would never have learned out of his operating system how to work in that app. Let me get back to my earlier example.
Yeah. Would you say that it's more common that the parents does this to the child and creates a damage to the inner child in there? when they're recognizing the differences, or you will say more about the society does this kind of like a little because you're a statistic, kind of like trying to ask you that, and there is a question towards you. I will kind of like ask you right after that.
I would say that is actually very individual because what parents maybe lack in their upbringing of the child, society, for example, when we look at Asian countries, could actually surplus and add. Um, and I would really stress that if parents would not recognize this operating system, it is not voluntarily. They just don't know. And let's go back to the basics of parenthood. Usually, parents just try to do their best and try to understand what is happening. But a crying baby can't tell, bloody hell, mum, I am a high sensitive person. Why don't you understand why I've been crying for 2 years? He can't vocalize that, starts the problem. And then you have parents who will go in depth and try to search, etc. And there's actually a very good book from Dr. Elaine Aron on the subject of a high sensitive child, how to recognize and how to work and deal with that child in his early years, in his puberty, etc. Um, so it is very individual. I would not be able to give an answer generalizing both.
Hmm.
And
Uh,
let me stress again, I start from the standpoint that it is never on purpose that a parent does not understand the child and there blocks or creates in a child problems or disconnection in the inner family system.
do you think that the HSP is coming in to fix the bloodline in a way, kind of like straighten the things out when there was not done it
No,
before?
no, I don't think it. I am, and with that, the professionals that work in this field, we are all of one thought. It is pure, basic human natural surviving. To survive, we need the people who go out for the food, and we need the people who watch over us while we get the food, that we do not get killed by that tiger lurking in the shrubs while we are aiming for that deer. No, we are the ones looking out and saying, oi, watch out. It is pure Darwin. I would stress, obviously, that people have the full right to think differently about nature and evolution. But from my and a lot of psychologists in this field point of view, it is a way of strengthening the species because that's the only way that species survive. And we need a good mix as a species to be able to survive. If we would only have persons, people, or whatever form it could be that go out for food, but we do not have the guardians
Mm,
and the guards and the people who watch out. Well, at that point, our species would not survive and we would become extinct.
exactly.
So that's where Darwin comes in.
Great. I love your way to think, put the things in. Even the people in the chat who's watching right now live on the YouTube, I'm gonna read you some of the comments. I like your metaphor that the HSP person are wired different. That's my explanation as well, and it's a beautiful quality as well. It came from Karen. Hearts of Source, any suggestions to HSPs for navigating the bombardment of frequency we're living in our Western culture? That is a question. Even the light bulbs screams at me to join in the symphony of the ringing in my ears.
I can't see the text, but could you paraphrase for me? What's exactly the question that this beautiful person is asking?
She's asking any suggestion that you may have if the person is a HSP and they are kind of like bombarded of this frequencies, those frequency that comes in, and the person is sensing those frequency in there. They're coming from people, from sources, or excuse me, or from different energy fields in there, for that leads more into the spirituality realms. That's how they explain these vibrations that you're sensing in there. And she's like trying to explain those bombardment that it's coming in towards the person of this different frequency we're living, and the difference between living in our Western cultures. And she asked for any suggestions. What can we do when we have this kind of like bombardment of this different frequency code that turning into emotions, to sensitivity, that type of sensitivity in there.
Yeah, yeah, I get it, and I fully concur that in here in Western society we live in a very loud society. If you compare to other societies, for example, the Eastern societies, they are calmer, quieter. Buddhism, Zen, etc. So approach is already different. Um, in my practice, this is actually the how can I cope with that question is the basic question. And in the years that I've been working in this field, I've developed what I've called the HSP power system. And that is actually the answer to the question is that before we learn to cope with, we first have to accept that. We cannot cope with if we do not accept our basic operating system. If we fight being an HSP, what I see very often in clients, and also misunderstanding or denial, there's nowhere that you can learn how to channel, limit, cap, taking your word, taking the word that you use quite often. The way that, for example, the influx of impressions and sensations are then translated into emotions. First, accept your basic operating system. Then we install the right apps to use. Mindfulness. I've got a full toolbox of mindfulness techniques which will allow HSPs to um, manage their emotions. So instead of being a volcano, be a calm sea. That's the objective. But also acceptance, really understanding who you are, why you are, and how it influences your life and your functioning. Those elements are all interconnected. Third element is working with your emotions and understanding that to survive, we use negative emotions. We use fear, we use anger, we use danger, we use tears, we use sadness. But to thrive, we need our positive emotions. Comes in positive psychology, gratitude, happiness, thankfulness, etc., etc. Recreate the balance. We need one to fill the other. We need the other to fill the one. So to answer the question, how can I cope with? You first start with acceptance. And based on that acceptance, you individually install the right coping apps. And that could work for me differently than for you as an HSP, to cope with that, and put boundaries to that huge influx of impressions, sentiments, vibrations, etc., to avoid our emotional system going berserk and all over the place.
Exactly. I look at that program as you talk about it that you developed. How can people join that program? Ace?
It's an individual program, but also now developing into a group therapy program. People can join by contacting me quite easily, so that I can send them the outline of what it is and how it works. And then, first of all, that you can feel if it indeed resonates with what you feel, experience inside. Then we will have a talk. We take a coffee or a tea and we will just chat, get to know each other. Because, second, most important thing is, do you and I click as therapist clients? Because it's equally important for me that I click with you, that you can click with me. Being an HSP, I get you. I understand you because I've been there. I've done it. I've lived through it. I felt the pain and I've also experienced the happiness. So that makes the work easier. Where classic therapists don't always understand our functioning, I can connect. And that makes it more interesting, but also more effective.
Exactly, the perfect click. Even in my field, there's a twin flames in there for it. That they can talk to a lot of people, even people on your field in there as psychologists, and they say like, "Hey, I'm a twin flame," and it's like, what is this? They don't get it. Well, we as the twin flames, we get that. We understand that this is what I said. I don't remember how many years ago it was that I was talking about that psychology need to evolve in order to understand, particularly this portions of the field. And when I found you as a HSP, I'm like, yes, finally, the universe did something great in there. All right, there's a few comments in here and one questions, by the way, darling. Uh, thank you for coming in too as well. Um, no one ever understood me. Those hearts of source. No one ever understood me. To everyone I saw, I was helpful to them and always cheerful about it. CC, we are born with a different operating system than our parents, in my case. Again, heart of source. That saying comes to mind. Forgive them for what they know, not what they do. In there, life is a simple. We just complicated the out of it. In there, Cici, is there is proof and research to be found how and why, where the operating system is created. Example, in a making of the DNA or cells with what cause. That is a one question, and another question is from Paulina. Hi everyone. Is hypervigilance a trait of HSP, or is it rather a result of trauma? Mm.
I love that question. That would invite me to dig deeper. But if I could give an orientation, because I would call this an orientation and not an answer. Because when
Mhm.
the word trauma comes in, I immediately go woo 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 alarm. Be careful, vigilance. See what's happening there.
Oh yeah.
Explore. Um, Hypervigilancy is one of our basic operating tools, because we need to be hyper vigilant for danger. That is incorporated in our operating system. To make it a little bit more complicated,
Hmm.
hypervigilance is also a personality trait. So in the layer above. Um, when it is a personality trait, so if we're looking at the level higher than the basic operating system, trauma can have influence on the level of hypervigilance. However, when we connect trauma to our basic operating system, it is actually the other way around. The basic operating system and the hypervigilance influences how we live, have lived, or deal with the trauma. I hope that makes sense because I can see it in front of me on a huge whiteboard, but there's a big difference there. Um, so the orientation is, if there is trauma and you are a highly sensitive person, the way that you are dealing with that trauma and that way that you live or have lived or are still living that trauma is very different from how um, other the other 80%, let's call it like that, are dealing with trauma.
Mm.
However, the trauma in relation to high vigilance as a personality trait, yes, because you would heighten that ability to protect yourself even more, to retract, deal with, or whatever your coping system with that trauma. I hope this makes a little bit sense. Otherwise, do not hesitate to review this recording to understand. And otherwise, contact me directly to chat if you want a little bit more about that.
Okay, and the previous questions was about is there is a proof and research to be found how and why where the operating systems is created. Example, making of DNA or cells or and what
Ah,
cause.
yeah. Well, there we go into basic procreation biology, where I, by choice, leave out the Bible. Um, the highly sensitive operating system is programmed in our DNA. However, when there's procreation and from both sides the chromosomes come together, if we go into basic evolution psychology, we will now see that there's a whole biological system in place that involuntarily or from us decides whether or not the chromosome is actually activated. So it is programmed in our DNA system. However, there's a whole system of neurons and hormones that in the end decide whether or not the operating system is actually put in place and activated. That is something that you can find online easily, especially with the latest discoveries in evolutionary biology and psychology. To answer the second question, yes, um, high sensitivity person, HSP, has been coined by Dr. Elaine Aron 25 years ago, and it is now quite a huge field within the ever evolving psychology science field. I'll get there in the end. Um, you can go online. Please avoid well meaning but not always accurate Facebook groups, if I can say it like that. But go a little bit further, look up the site, for example, from Dr. Aaron. There's HSP Exploration Institute that you can find online. There's a lot of books, documentation, so it is very well documented.
Oh wow, that's a very great resource for the
I've,
people
I've
who
got them.
are.
I've got them here. For example, this, if you can see it, this is the basic book from Dr. This is where it started 25 years ago. This book, The Highly Sensitive Person by Dr. Aaron. And that's where the development and the recognition started from, and from there. And then in connection with positive psychology, which was my original field of study and specialization, the connection is beautiful.
Mhm. Can you connect the dots between the psychology and the spirituality and philosophy in there, and how are they operating with an HSP? There was a very good question there that was brought at in one of your forums, and there can an HSP be a spiritual person? And there, that was it. They come out
Okay.
for.
Yeah. I love that question, and the question is not to be or not to be, to pull up our famous Shakespeare. It is the way that you live it, actually. Spirituality in its own right, and that is where your expertise comes in, for example, is in its own right an item. But how I live my spirituality and spirituality as an item, as an HSP, or someone who is not an HSP is totally different. So it is more about the way that I experience spirituality than if I am spiritual, because that's a whole different connection.
Exactly. Yes. That's what it is because a lot of the people who comes in, they say like, I think I might, and so forth. And here you see that, and I think I might, you see this doubts in there when the people who comes in, they're like, I know I am. I experience in this and this, and that's what it is. To my, I always knew it since I was a child, and then I know the person had that program in them. The person had that information system there, and they are just like, I don't know what to tell myself, which is that's what the philosophy is. The philosophy, it's coming, it's portion that works within a psyche, within a person in there. And this is what I was asking you this question. We have like another 10 minutes left in there. My kind of like a question to you will be how did the person coops? Let's say, for example, with the childhood trauma created of this misunderstanding who they are and what they are in their coups once realizing he is different, like he is a HSP, and how that affects into the adult life, where the people comes in as an adult to you, and it's like, yeah, I was always different, but I was always misunderstood. I always did not know, but I always had this senses. This I can feel other people. I'm a hyper empathic in there. I can sense them, what they have, and so forth. Uh, what could be some of the kind of like I don't want to be going to that because we can go for hours and hours of this. I already know that, but kind of like like a few tips, like something so that people can take it with them
Uh,
who's listen video.
it starts with acceptance. I understand now who I am. And now I understand why, for example, in childhood, I reacted differently than, for example, my friends in class. Let me give you a personal example. When I was in high school, equivalent of high school in the Netherlands, I would by all costs avoid the breaks between classes. I would not, I would try to not venture into the mess or the canteen or whatever you would call it, because I could not cope with that big mass of people and all that, whatever you call it, that had an influence on me. I would be in the student council, I would be organizing events and parties, etc., everything that I could do to avoid. So, first of all, now I understand why. And it helped me develop my organizational talents because that's where I use them to explore. Then coping mechanisms is starting first of understanding your emotions and why you react to a certain input of why do you react to a certain sense, flashlights or
Hmm.
smells or loud bangs on the ears, um, and then setting boundaries, and not boundaries by running away, but understanding the situation where you are in, and then giving you tools like, for example, something that I enjoy myself is a color practice. I would look around in the, for example, example from yesterday. Let me give you a pure example of something that I worked on with a client yesterday. A client told me, I have a good friend, and with her partner, we were dining together, the three of us, and they suddenly started to row. And they said a big row, violent row. As an HSP person, that would enter into your system like hammer blows. First reaction is run away, but that means that home you would relive the row again and again and again and again and again, and you won't stop. While those two have ended their row and are already sipping their wine. That's how an operating system HSP works. One of the tools that I gave her yesterday is at that moment to distance yourself and to block the influx of negative emotions and vibes. Look around you in the room and try to define the colors: brown, yellow, green, blue, light blue, pink. And I can assure you that at that moment you will start distancing yourself from the situation that you're in. And that is, for example, a coping tool that I share with clients, and that really works. And I also use it for myself. Does that answer your question?
Oh yeah, definitely. I will say that because the acceptance we're talking about the acceptance that I go by it is what it is. You accept it
Mhm.
right away. The things as it is what it is, and you cook it right there in the moment and the spot. And this kind of like a programs, as we said, I can totally relate it to you because I had some issues to even go out for shopping because with this high sensitivity in me, I can sense the people what do they think. Imagine this kind of like ability inside, this psychic ability in there. And I could not even look into the people because I can read, what's going on. And I was like, imagine you're going to the shopping mall and there's hundreds
It's
of
like
people
having
in there.
hundreds of radios around you and all blasting it at
Yes,
high volume for you.
yes,
Yeah, I understand. And you want to run away screaming.
yes. CF, thank you, brother. He said, prior to starting today's session, is there something you had thought about that you wish to share with the community that has not been covered already? Is there a wisdom you wish to share? It's kind of like a wisdom that's asking you to
Oh yeah,
share.
yeah. One of my mantras, for the people who are interested, one of my go-to books is actually the Four Toltec Agreements from Dr. Manuel Ruiz, who actually wrote that book before HSP was labeled, but actually they are quite connected. And the second Toltec agreement is quite simple, and in French it sounds actually beautiful. Quoi qu'il t'arrive, n'en fais pas une affaire personnelle. Or in English, whatever happens you, don't take it personally.
Yeah, I call it.
Whatever
Yeah,
happens to you, don't take it personally. One of the deeper layers of an HSP person is that any criticism, whether it is positive or negative, we take it negatively and we take it as a personal attack. It is the way that it is wired, and it is uniform with every HSP person. In that case, one of the tools is repeat the mantra, the second Toltec agreement from Dr. Manuel Ruiz. Whatever happens, don't take it personal.
yeah. So we call it the Q-tip. Quit taking it personally.
Yeah, but I would have my reflection on the word
Yeah.
quit
Yes.
because
Yes.
that is not always possible. But at least
Yes.
we can
Lower it
qualify,
down. Yes.
make dampen it, soften it.
Yeah, and Paulina, so could sensing other people minds and emotion be a real thing accepted by psychology? Sometimes it feels so real, and it's hard to tell if it's not yourself projecting fears on others.
Oh, could be. But then we enter a little bit into um, classic psychology and enter Dr. Freud. It's called mirroring. And it's actually a quite a normal human coping mechanism where we project, mirroring, projecting our own fears on the other to get acknowledgement and to understand what's happening. I would
Hmm.
disconnect a little bit from HSP because this enters the full field of psychology and the way
Yes.
that we people cope with what is happening to us in the world.
Yeah, I get that. I get that
Yeah,
because
but that would need exploration. That would need digging to help divide. This is my fear, and I'm projecting it on you. Then why do you do that? Why do you need it? And these are the emotions that I can sense in and from others because I have a huge antenna that picks them up. And how do I deal with that? Do I
yeah.
block them? Do I accept them? Do I use them?
Yes, that's where the culture comes in at the development of how.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, and this is leading from right now as we're talking about the advancements. Currently, we were talking about it before. The people were operating from the survival and all this uh, aside. Wow, right now the people with this new operation system, they're beginning to be aware of in there, and they understand that if I do this, that's my consequences that's going to follow. Is that going to help me? So I have to put the proper actions in there. That's going to help not only me, but it helps also and in there. So instead of passing the fears, you're passing something else as in there.
Yeah.
So
Would you
forth.
would you would you allow me a quick remark on what you just said?
Oh
You
yes, definitely. That's why you're here, so not a problem. We still have a
you
few minutes. Yeah.
you said this new operating system. However, it has been around since humans have become cognitive capable, which when we started thinking about 15,000 years ago. For example, if we now look with what we now know about HSP to, for example, old scriptures, even at the ages of the old Egyptians, but also, for example, a little bit closer, the painter Claude Monet from the Impressionists, we
Mhm.
recognize that certain certain Egyptians in their wall paintings could have been HSP. We know that Claude Monet, from his letters and his paintings, was probably HSP. It is not new. It's only now that we start recognizing it and
Mhm.
understanding what we can do with it.
Exactly. I was referring to these Egyptians because this kind of like things were explained in the past, even in the Bible and descriptions in the holy books, even in the Hinduism, which is the Hinduism is the oldest survival religion that right now it's still in operating in there, developed 17,000 years ago. For it, totally agree with you. Um, Perfect chat. I want to say thank you. I want to say thank you to you for sharing your heart and knowledge in there. You guys can connect to Hyde through his website. I already posted in the link below for it. And I want to say thank you all of you guys that came here for the chat and asked the beautiful questions. And in the future, if there's any, we can do another show with him. We'll keep that posted and in mind. And I want to say thank you again. And if you have any further questions for the video or for the comments, please put it in the comments and below. And with that, guys, I wish you good luck, good love, and I give you back into high so he can say his final words and there for it. But again, guys, thank you. It was a pleasure having you here.
It was a big pleasure. Thank you for the comments. Thank you for the questions. Thank you for your insights. And looking forward to next time with pleasure.